Well, I'm back working on the 500, and yeah, things tend to snowball. You know, I've got that filter screw fixed, but I figured, well, I'll replace my tack cable because my tack wasn't working. Well, the end is all boogered up. So I had a new one. And I replaced that. But when I started it up, it immediately pegged the needle. Turns out this tack is bad, and you know, it's all floppy in here. Now, they're a sealed unit. You know, this is crimped around the edge, which is too bad, because there's, you know, like a lot of times, like I've got some of them that have got broken glass perfectly fine, but the glass is broke, but I can't replace it unless I can uncrimp this, which I should try sometime. It's going to get to that point eventually. But I dug through my instruments, of which I have a lot, because I mentioned before, these 500s, you know, they are really hard on instruments. You know, I went through a lot of speedometers mostly, but evidently tacks too, because I got quite a few of them laying around in various states of disrepair. Like this one now, this is probably fine, but the the glass is all fogged up. You know, it's like there's something, there's a kind of a seal that let go in there. But if I could take this glass off and put it on that one, you know, it'd be all right. But it's amazing, really, how many, I've got a lot of these laying around, and I was able to find one that works, but it's kind of dinged up. You know, a couple of the dents in the, one in the chrome and one in the lens gasket area, but it appears to still be sealing. And that one actually works, so I'll put that one on. But I am going to have to order in another one, but I'll put this one on for now, mostly because you do have your indicators. You know, you don't really need a tack, you kind of use common sense, but you have the wiring for the indicators for the neutral, which you don't really need, turn signal and high beam. Well, them it's all right to have. So I'll slap this on there for now. Not a big deal, and as long as I was digging, you know, I mentioned before, you know, I've got well over 100,000 miles on this bike, and I'm still running the factory clutch cable. I have a new one that has been sitting around for a long time. I used to actually carry it under the tank bag in case I needed it, but ever since I mentioned that it's got so many miles on that original clutch cable, I've been thinking about that clutch cable, thinking someday she's going to let go. So I'm going to pull that one off and put the new one on, and then I won't have to worry on it for like 100,000 miles again. You know, as long as I got it sitting around, it does me more good in the bike than, I mean, you could drive a bike without a clutch cable, but it's not a pleasant experience. You know, it's a little tricky, especially with a big single. And while I was digging in here, I cleaned up my air filters. Now I run K&N, and you know, I took the stock air box out because that's kind of a lot of garbage in there anyway. I cleaned all that out of there, and it gives me room to run this big of a filter. And it's a little unusual in that, you know, it has a particular angle to it, and it just barely fits in there, but it fits. But these are good. They're gauze between two layers of screen, and then they're oiled. So they flow tremendously, especially this bigger one. And they filter great. They're an excellent filter. K&N is always the way to go in an aftermarket filter. But they flow, you know, and that's the whole thing, especially on something like this. Like say here again, when I took that air box out, they normally breathe, the crankcase breathes through the air box. That's kind of a pollution control device. But K&N makes an aftermarket breather for them that simplifies things greatly. Just goes on top of the motor and lets air, because you're moving, you know, every time the piston goes up and down, you're moving 500 cc's of air in the crankcase, so it's got to be able to breathe, or you'll start blowing seals out or weeping around the seals. But I took down the numbers because I had to get some more of these. Just have spares on hand, though, like I say, they really are a lifetime kind of filter unless you really smuck them up. But the whole thing on these, on this big motor, is breathing. And the one thing, you know, yeah, you got to be able to get air through. And I'm running the big Mikuni, the 38, because that's really the weak link, and a lot of stock carburetors are just too darn small. But that allowed me to put the bigger filter on, and it's a whole, you know, there again, snowball effect. But in doing that, one of the weak links on these is the exhaust system. The stock exhaust system is very heavy, very quiet, but it's hard to muffle a big single. So I've got the Super Trap on here, and now Super Trap works in a way that, you know, it's funny because you look at it, you think the exhaust comes out here. It doesn't. The exhaust comes out here. It's like gills on a fish. There's plates, and there's gaps between these plates, and that's where your exhaust comes out. They're tunable in that you can, you know, like for trail riding, you can cut it down to like 6 discs. For street riding, we're still keeping a certain amount of muffling to it. You can cut it down to, well, you can bring it up to like 12. I'm actually running 24, and then I'm also running what's called a resonator on the back of it, which is just an empty space. There's no opening in the end. There's actually a spring on the end. But that kind of absorbs some of the pulsations of a big single, kind of smooths out the airflow. They work really well. You know, Super Trap, again, I run them on all my bikes. Much lighter, much simpler, and, you know, I mean, they got a little snort to them, but they work really well. But I got to set valves on it, and I got to let it cool down a little bit more because I was running it to test out the speedometer, or the tachometer cable. It's kind of funny too because I was going to order more of this oil, and well, I should check under the part number of the oil because it looks to me like everything comes in an aerosol can now. This is back in the days where it came in a squirt bottle, but everything's got to be aerosol now. But I'll put that new tack on, or, you know, for now, it's a temporary deal, but it'll get me by. And I got a few other things to do to it, but it's a good way to fiddle around with it. But like I say, things on this sort of thing, you start doing one thing and you end up, you know, snowballing. But I ride it a lot, and I got some riding I want to do probably tomorrow. They got Fort Ransom going on, and I think I'll head down there. But we got to get this all done first. But now I got to set the valves, which means I got to find the right Allen wrench, because I normally use those on a ratchet, but you can't get them in here. It takes a short one to get at them. Might be in my toolkit, because I carry a lot of tools with me on this bike. Well, and everything I drive. I'm very fond of having tools. I can always get out of a jam if I've got the tools. But back to work on that.